Hello everyone, this is Brother Benson Media, and today I'm in the heart of Kisumu at Kisumu Peace and Center for Justice. We just want to have a conversation and know about the justices and everything that has been happening in Kisumu. Let me take this opportunity and give my guest a chance to say a word of hi to our viewers.
I am a revolutionary community organizer here in Kisumu, ably serving as one of the volunteers here at Kisumu Peace and Justice Center. Our work mainly centers around supporting members of the community to access justice. We mostly focus on the underprivileged members of the community, as well as the disadvantaged, those who might face a hurdle or two to fully access justice within the referral pathways.
Kisumu is accounted as one of place that I've grew up in, and my foundation is built in this place, especially from Nyalenda, those who might know. So as somebody who has been fighting for the community and justice for the vulnerable community, maybe share with us how it has been with you through your fight to today. Yeah.
I think it has been one hell of an experience because not only have I been targeted for doing what anybody would think is right, because justice is a common goal for everybody. But when you fight for justice, you find that the injustices also fight back. So it has been quite a hell of an experience. I've been volunteering as a human rights defender for about 10 years now. Actively started doing it in 2018, but as early as 2013, I was in the formative stages as a peace ambassador. My work initially centered around building peace within the community. As a young person, I was in the front lines of the 2007-2008 post-election violence. And it is that experience that, kind of gave me a kick to probably do something around this cycle of violence. So ideally, I didn't know what to do then, but just like anybody else, this is not something we'd wish to recur. So as we were heading towards the next election, which was in 2012, I think it was very important for us to come up with something as young people, something that would put us in the front lines, just to show that young people were in the front lines of promoting peace, instead of the common branding that we are violent and riotous. I'm sure you know that stone throwing is a common fighting tool here. And whenever people are aggrieved, whenever they have some grievances, whenever they are protesting, then it can easily degenerate into stone throwing battles with police shooting from the other end. This has led to a lot of human rights violations, grievous human rights violations, destructions of livelihoods, destructions of property, destructions of infrastructure. So it was very important for me as a person to, play a role in breaking this continuous cycle that has been bedeviling us as a community. So that is what gave birth to Sitarusha Mawe Tena, and launched in 2012, but officially registered in 2013. So we are about 10, 11 years old in our struggle to break the cycle of violence.
So it has been a journey.
Quite a journey, I tell you.
You've spoken about 2027, 2207, and it seems you are there. So which means You're a living experience from 2027, all the election period to the last one we had. It reminds us of painful experience because we've lost our breadwinners, we've lost our sons, we've lost our uncles, and we've lost our heroes, the young men that would make the backbone of our community. And all this, they're trying to fight for a common goal to find justice. As somebody that also have witnessed and somebody has been fighting for it, how has the experience been for you looking for justice for those we've lost and maybe for those who are living but in pain?
You know, the cycle of violence for us is not new. The cycle of violence is something that is around almost hitting a century now. I mean, if you do your historical analysis, you'll realize that in Kisumu and the entire Luo nation, the cycle of violence is not new. The cycle of violence started way before elections. And the saddest bit of this is the realization that all this time, as a people, we have never experienced 5 consecutive years without the cycle of violence. Like I said, if you do your own historical analysis, you'll realize, like in the period between 1950, 51, 52, that is the period that Ofafa Jericho was killed. And, you know, there were a lot of efforts to ensure that the Luos didn't take revenge against the perceived killers, who the government then was trying to distort for their own selfish interest, to blame the Kikuyu so that it would turn into a tribal fight. There was a lot of public protest and people died. In the period before the independence, that is around 58, 59, that is when we had the first party elections within the entire region. And that is when we experienced the fight between Kanu and Kadu. That fight was violently fought here in Luo Nyanza. In areas like central Kenya and Nairobi, it was a bit of more conversations and ordinary political tussles. But for us as a people, it was violently fought. After independence, there has been a lot of assassinations that have been happening. After each assassination, there has been public protests here in Kisumu. And after each public protest, we've always seen it turning violent and people dying, properties being destroyed, infrastructure being destroyed, and a lot of violations occurring. The death of Piogama Pinto in 64, the death of Argun Skodek in just right after, the death of and I think 69 for us was a particular year, yeah, because in January, that is when they killed Piogama Pinto. In July, that is when they killed Tom Mboya. In October, that is when we had the Russia massacre. So in one whole year, 1969 was the turning point for us as a nation. The Kanu fighting Mlolongo and the beginning of the struggle for multi-partyism in the late 80s and 90s. And there were a lot of killings around that time. And this has gone on and on and on, and I can still mention a lot of others that maybe people are not familiar with, like Odhiambo Mbai. There was Ongili, there was Ambala, there was Horace Owiti, there was Mito Jura, there was a lot of nationalists and a lot of liberators from this region were being assassinated. And every time they were assassinated, there was always violence. Every time there was political struggles, political conversations around fight for multipartyism, fight for referendum, fight for independent electoral commissions, the fight for devolution, all these have always resulted into cycle of violence. So for us, up to as recent as the protests for high costs of living just last year, we have been seeing violence. The impacts have been the same. Just the same way we had baby Pendo dying in 2017. In 2000 and in 2022 would have been, I think, a bit different. But then again, even before the elections, the party elections were very violent. And even after the elections, the high cost of living, we experienced the same violence. So for us as a people, this has been a struggle. How do you break such a cycle that has been there? I can tell you that is an experience that, as a young person of this country, I think it is something I don't regret. Each generation has their role to play in the liberation struggle. For me, I feel that for my generation, then this would be the struggle. Each generation played their role. So for us, this is our struggle to break the cycle of violence in Kisumu.
But you mentioned something about the last demonstration for cost of living. I know there's a very sad experience that you had, and you'll talk about that, about your kidnapping. And what I want to ask you about is about after the demonstration, and it was agreed that now we should have a national dialogue, and a committee was informed, and they came up with an article report. And one of the, or some of the decisions that came out, or some of the points they agreed upon, we feel, to me, I might be wrong, I felt like the pertinent issue was not addressed. One of the things that was not addressed was the cost of the living. That was not addressed. Secondly, the justice for the young men, especially that's lost their life, that was not there in the report. As somebody who is fighting for the rights of the people, for the community, what was your take when you saw the report?
We give so much hope to these politicians to an extent that we always feel that they would sort our things. That's the feeling I had. Because, like you say, that was not a people's discussion. The issues that affect the people were not on the table in that discussion. The high cost of living that is going on to date, that is making every sector in our country to go on strike. When the doctors, when the teachers, when the nurses, when even matatu sector go on strike for better working conditions, it is because of the high cost of living. At the end of the day, the common voice that is coming from the people is that the cost of living is very high for common mwananchi. The politicians who have been hiring young people to cause havoc, that conversation was not discussed. The people who've suffered from the impact, those who need reparations, those who need closure, their voice was not heard in the table. What we saw were just politicians who were there and sharing bread, each person taking their side. For me, this is a recon for our people. We always have revolutionary moments. Every phase of a generation has a revolutionary moment. So for us, this is the revolutionary moment. The political class has betrayed us as young people. That after putting in the sweat, the tears, the blood into the struggle, they share the crumbs amongst themselves, their families, their concubines, their associates, and ignore the common wananchi who are in the front lines and who bore the brunt, those who have the scars of the fight for making a better Kenya. It is very sad that the NADCO report ignored all this, but what did we expect? It is important for us as a people to now start organizing towards alternatives to that. Once we realize that the political class do not give a damn of who we are or what we want or what are our aspirations as a people, then it is very important for us to now start organizing, building our own movements building solidarity, connecting our struggles, and then aiming all this towards capturing political power. That is what young people must do now. That this time round we must share, we must say that we want our share. We are not going to be used in the front lines. We are not going to be targeted and pay the price of public protest because we are the ones who normally protest. The politicians come with their big vehicles, take their photo shoots, then they leave. But they leave the young people like us on the front lines, actually struggling because we are the ones who bear the brunt. Yeah.
Maybe your experience, I've asked you also about your experience during the demos that just ended, because, and your kidnapping. How was life like, or how was it to you?
They thought they were targeting me as one of the key organizers and mobilizers for the protests in Kisumu. But what they forgot was that they were targeting the will of the people, because what I was doing was the will of the people. And in every crisis, there emerges a leader. I always feel that that has ushered me into leadership now, because when you go into a community and start targeting common wananchi, ordinary people who are now in the front lines of fighting for justice, you know, and you start intimidating, persecuting us. A lot of people were killed. Some of us were kidnapped. I wasn't the only one who was kidnapped. One of our colleagues, Ogeta, who is Raila Odinga's bodyguard, was kidnapped the same time that I was kidnapped. None of us was physically assaulted, but we were just put away for a period until they were sure that the protest period had passed, because that is the first time that Azimio had called for the 3-day successive demos. So we did the first day, which was very successful, and there was a lot of impact. There was very little police violence. On the second day is when all of us were kidnapped. There was intentional targeting of defenders, not only myself here in Luo Nyanza. One of our offices in Nyando was burned. We just officially launched it, I think, 2 weeks ago. Police went in there, and according to the IPOA report, they're saying a grenade was thrown inside an office, a space like this. One of our comrades was shot at in the leg. Another one was physically attacked in Kondele by unknown people who just came out of nowhere. Somebody who was just documenting the human rights violations, and members of the public know him, so it wouldn't be members of the public. There is also another comrade in Nyalenda who was shot twice, on the shoulder and on the head. So there was a systemic and intentional targeting of human rights defenders during that period. When we had just planned for the Thursday's demonstration, which was the second day of the 3-day successive demo, we received a call that there was a lot of killings in Kondele, that the then in charge of Kondele police station was shooting haphazardly at protesters and anybody who was just passing. So I mobilized the media, because my work ideally at that time was to monitor human rights violations. And if there was an issue that we felt needed immediate attention, I would reach out to the concerned key player or duty bearer. Or if we felt that it was an issue that needed exposure, like looting, like the haphazard killing, if we had rogue officers who are taking advantage of the media, then that our role was to expose. So when I went to Kondele, we went there, we called members of the press, and we were addressing our press conference before it was disrupted. So as we ran to safety, some people in motorbikes just waylaid us, captured me, drove me around, covering my head with a jacket until I was confused on where we were actually going to. Then they went and locked me up at a very lonely house in a lonely compound. Later on, when I was peeping, I noticed I was in the middle of a sugarcane plantation. So then that would mean I was in the areas of around Muhoroni, Chemelil, Nandi there. They locked me up there for a day. I spent the night in that solitary confinement. They came, took me on the last day, drove again, covered my head with the jacket, drove me around, Then they went and dumped me in the sugar plantation. They just told me to close my eyes and pray, give my last prayer. So, you know, he had a gun in the hand, and I think for me, that was quite a recon moment, because I was thinking about my family now, who's going to find me here. So is this the moment that what I have given my life to fight for is, you know, what was now again affecting me. So I just closed my eyes, started praying. When I opened my eyes, I was alone. They had left. So yeah, I just ran into the sugarcane plantation, hid there for quite some time, tried to find my way pole pole, walked for quite a distance until I came into a certain village. And I think that is how the process of knowing where I was. That's when I knew I was actually around Chemelil area. Around 2021, when we had the Mashujaa celebrations here in Kisumu, again, the then county commissioner called Madam Josephine called and said that they had received some intel that I was spearheading the disruption of a presidential function, and said that they would not let it. And I remember in one of my meetings that I was in, we were in a retreat where I had comrades who we work with at some hotel up the hill. Was surrounded by almost 7 Land Cruisers, and we still don't even know what the intentions are. I really appreciate my comrades in the human rights sector who came to my defense and also whisked me away to safety. I mean, in 2017, while we were capturing the post-election violence then, I was one of the key documenters. And I still appreciate our current governor, Nyong'o, because I saw that time he mobilized almost all the leaders, and they did a public presser at sports ground just to defend me, you know. And again, my comrades in the human rights sector took me out of the country for protection. I've been locked in the mortuary severally. I mean, just because we are going to document a few incidences that we suspect have been extrajudicial executions. I've been arrested severally. I've been taken to court on malicious charge. I've been brutalized by police officers. At one point, about 7 of them were what we call mob injustice on me, just because of the fight for human rights. But then we still say aluta continua. For as long as the work we are doing is playing a role in liberating our community at any particular point, then for me, we still go on. Saluta continua.
Thank you so much for your work. Now, let's come to the community. I was following through your post, especially Facebook. There was a pertinent issue that you were raising about these women who do not have their husbands, especially when it comes to land. These women are losing their lands at the hands of unknown or maybe known people, and you've taken that initiative, posting and giving people update. How is that one going?
You know, Kisumu as a city, they have been implementing a regeneration plan that involves evicting people in some corridors, involving demolitions of some areas, and replanning of the town. Now, this has led to a lot of displacements and evictions, like I said. So most of the people who were in town have now turned their focus on the areas that surround town. In majority of the areas surrounding town is the rural Kisumu, this peri-urban Kisumu, especially in areas like Nyamasaria, Kisumu East, Kisumu West, areas like Nyando sub-county, Kadibo. These are urban areas where there is a lot of rural folk, but they're just neighboring the city. It's less than 10 minutes away from the city. So these cartels have seen the progress at which the town is growing and have now sought to grabbing land around these areas. Majority of the lands around these areas are very huge parcels because they were formerly rural areas that were initially being used for just farming or lying idle. They can't stand such a fight. So they are being dispossessed, forcefully disposed of their land. Then there are those who are targeting the disadvantaged families, mostly the widows, the old vulnerable women, those who also don't have a know-how of how to defend their land or probably don't fully utilize their land. So these cartels have been colluding with some unscrupulous officials at the lands officers. They collude with rogue police officers. They take advantage and abuse court processes to ensure that they forge documents and grab this land from these vulnerable families. It is sad that within a very short period of time when we were documenting, we noticed that there was a pattern where after the documents have been forged through the unscrupulous officials at the lands offices, they use officers to come and arrest, intimidate, or forcefully evict these vulnerable families. We have a lot of them who are still having court cases after malicious prosecution. We have a lot of them who are still pursuing justice after being assaulted and their properties destroyed during these evictions. Now, this is a common pattern here. And the sad bit of it is that the government that is supposed to protect these people has not only been has either been colluding or being an enabler by not taking action. We organized a protest where we mobilized all these victims and we went and stormed the land offices and demanded for the closure of the office until all the rogue officers within that office were taken to court, were held accountable for their action. We also wanted the rogue police officers who've been maliciously, arbitrarily arresting and detaining innocent members of the public. We wanted action taken on them. Unfortunately, such issues, the government has been very slow to act on them. And even as we speak, we still get more cases coming in, speaking about, how they are still being dispossessed of their land and how even members of government, especially officers of the chief, are turning into either brokers or, colluding with these cartels to take this land. Now, that is a common case here. We have seen a lot and plenty of women who we have documented to have suffered from that scourge.
That's one brings me to question to ask, because we have a representation. We have here, for instance, in Kisumu County, we have in the leadership of His Excellency Professor Nyang', we have the Senator Honorable Tom Ojenda, we have our members of parliament and county members, because that is a representation. That's why you went to those legislative houses to represent the views of the people. And if there is a matter like this, and have you got an opportunity to sit down with it or to kind of like share with them what the people that they represent are going through, to an extent whereby, or in your own land, you can go to jail or you can be charged? And what is their say?
When we went and spoke to some of the duty bearers, they were actually acknowledging that there's a crisis around the subject of land in Kisumu, but very few of them were offering solutions. And I think one of the reasons why we resorted to public protest is because now we were not getting help in these offices, despite even some of them being mandated to be protecting these women from these grabbers. They have been given the mandate, they have been given the resources, they have been given the constitutional powers, they have been given manpower, financial resource to ensure that they are able to protect such women, but they are just, speaking to a crisis that we are facing as a country. The reason why these leaders can't do anything is because we are having a crisis of leadership. Majority of them were not for the people. They were not elected on the basis that they were really going to represent and defend the people. They were elected on the basis that they were going to safeguard some interest or they had a lot of money that they could buy their way in. I think for me that is the giveaway for our leaders, and that is what is letting us down. So we wouldn't expect much even from the senator or the governor. Look at what's happening now around floods.
Floods, yes.
We've not seen the governor go in there like somebody whose county is really being affected. There has been cries that all the investment that is being put to cushion the people there is resources coming from the national government. So you can imagine if they had both of them combined resources, the county and the national government, then it would have been something. I know, like in the last period, I just got a reminder on my Facebook page the other day that around 2020, I made a post criticizing the county, how floods was wreaking havoc, and they were just waiting for a period where they can go for photo shoots while giving food, and then, go and blog without really focusing on the people there. So we don't expect much from the leadership. The political class is a letdown to us as a people and as a generation.
Let me come back to Sitarusha Mawe Tena. And I think earlier you really gave an elaborate explanation, especially, and even the myth that when we think about Kisumu, when we think about Kisumu, not even Kisumu, we think about the Onagi nation. Something that we are associated with is throwing stone and being violent. And this is something that is telling them, like, we are not going to throw stone again. How has the reception been?
It has been multifaceted. Like I said, we started the campaign in 2012 out of the realization and after being inspired by the need to break the cycle of violence. But when we were heading towards the 2017 elections, there was a common phrase that people kept telling us. Anytime we went there to speak about peace, to speak about the alternatives to violence, people would always ask us, what about justice? And that is what led to the formation of Kisumu Peace and Justice Center. Because we realized that when we were telling people to embrace alternative ways to violence, especially active non-violence methods whenever they wanted to protest, there are a lot of injustices that were not being addressed, that needed to be addressed. So the best way to intervene was for us to ensure that we make follow-ups to these injustices, especially those that occur around the period of this violence. Stone throwing was considered a culture as a people. Some people still do consider it as a culture. So it was kind of a giant that we were facing. It was like a Goliath's battle. And a lot of times when we would go to the streets, people would laugh at us. People would sometimes ignore us. There are also incidences where people were hostile and not receptive to what we were doing. But I think we adopted art, and I think activism really worked very well for us. And this has really reached, I think our message really reached to a lot of quarters that it would otherwise have not. What I would say is this, that violence is a matter of tactic. There are times when the people adopt it for their own good. And I will give you an example. If people were not barricading the roads, if people were not keeping off the police officers and allowing them to penetrate the communities more, then we would be experiencing more effects, more human rights violations from these rogue officers. So tactically then that it would be important to employ that violence because some of the perpetrators of this violence were rogue police officers who were now taking advantage of that period to either extort, to arbitrarily arrest, brutalize wananchi, and even loot, because we have incidences where police officers were stealing people's property and food. Members of the public have slowly been embracing the slogan against violence, but conditionally. Change is progressive, of course. Conditionally, that there must be justice, and justice must be seen to be done. We just don't need to tell them that, yeah, this and this is happening. They must be able to see, feel, and even in their own assessment, have that sense of justice. That has been the conditional, I think, silently, the conditional reason that members of the public have put in order to embrace our slogan, Sitarusha Mawe. And we are doing a lot. We are doing a lot to ensure that members of the public get that justice, so that the next time even there is more perpetration, they are able to seek legal ways to deal with that justice.
Okay, thank you very much. Now let me come to the leadership issue before we wind up about the Onagi Nation, because I'm in Kisumu and this is Onagi area, the Luo Nation. Do you feel there's that disconnect between the community themselves? Because you've been working with the communities, you know the challenges that they're going through. There's a disconnect between the community of Onagi and their leadership.
Yeah, a huge one. One, I mean, look at the average age of the leadership that is here. But that disconnect is short-lived, and I will tell you why. Right now, as we speak, the young people, especially in the Luo Nation, are already looking up to transition. We have already seen a gap, and we know that in the next 10, 15 years from now, we will be having a huge gap, and that gap might turn into another leadership crisis if we don't present ourselves now to take up political power. Young people, the young leaders in the Luo Nation, the young leaders who come from the Luo Nation must now step up. They must not be cowards. They must now step up and say, and capture their space and say that we are safeguarding the legacies of the forefathers who've been leading us through these generations. For example, Raila Odinga has a legacy, and that's the legacy of devolution. So it is us now to come and safeguard it. We don't need him still on the front lines right now. He should be mentoring us. Anyang' Nyong'o cannot now do a 50-year plan because he will not live to see it through. He needs to guide young people like us who can see such a plan through. Look at Orengo. Look at Oburu Odinga. These are people who are averagely in their 70s. I mean, if you look at the average age of the leaders in Luo Nyanza, they are very old if you compare to other regions like Western, where we have the Sifunas, the Sakajas, who are already taking up spaces. If you go to the Kalenjin Nation, I mean, look at Ruto, look at the average age of the leaders there. But when you come to Luo Nyanza, then it is very sad. So what about us who are well grown now and probably don't want to take up this mantle because the Wazes are using age as a stick to keep us off leadership? We are going to take that power this time round by force, whether they give it to us or not. In the year 2027, young people must capture political power. There's no option around that. This is the time that we should now start organizing ourselves within communities, building ideas, building solidarity, so that by the time it is the next election, they'll find us already structured and in the community, ready to liberate our people into the next.
You talked about the age, and we are doing comparisons with other counties or other regions, and you find like our leadership age group is the one that is aging. Not of we don't respect them, we adore them, and we respect them in their leadership. And the young people are not having like very active posts and very potential posts that like even is mentoring them. So what can we do as the young leaders? Then we have like what we call a self-conversation that is very respectful with the old, and tell them, you know what, you've served us well, it is our time, so that we don't get suppressed, because that is what is there from my own analysis. Because I feel like the young people of Nyanza or the young people of Luo Nyanza are not given that freedom to express themselves or to vie freely for those very, very sensitive elective posts like governors. because we are finding like a typical example. We are having Nandi governor, His Excellency Sang. Sang is doing his second term. The guy is not even in his 50. So it tells you like how they are. Go to Bomet, a young lady that came from nowhere, no money, with no family background name, just went and became a woman rep. Compared to our counties, whereby the people who are holding those posts, they are aging. What should we do as a youth and even as the people who are holding the leadership?
Three things that come into my mind.
Yes.
I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I could be right. One is we should offer ourselves. We should dare the system and offer ourselves as the alternatives. And that is why it is important for us to start organizing now. Two is as a matter of tactic. Young people must now make a deal with the women of this country. The women are more than 50% of the population. Young people, according to recent statistics, we are way above 75%, probably heading towards 80. If we can collaborate and ensure that we are going to protect our women whenever they are doing their campaigns, whenever they are doing the implementation of their policies, that as young people, our work is to protect their women until they implement. And our women, their work is to ensure that our voice, our space on the bargaining table is guaranteed. That whatever we want as young people is also addressed. With that, we will be able to determine any elective position, because we will already be like 80% of a voting bloc. Young people and women must work together now. This is the time. We don't need to wait for any other time. We must sign a deal unconditionally. Na sisi tu tuseme bana, we will make sure that we women, hakuna mtu atakuja vuruge your political rally. Nobody will come and harass you in your conversation whenever you are speaking to the public, or intimidate you politically. But our women must also assure us that young people, your voice, the thing you speak about, high cost of living, unemployment, land grabbing, all these things, police brutality, is on the table and is being discussed, period.
Okay.
The third thing that we must do is that we must be ready to dare the system. A lot of times when we speak about young people, when we tell the wazees about young people, they look at young people as their children who are indisciplined, who've been drinking all their lives and abusing drugs, irresponsible, lived, we call them the blue band boys.
Yeah.
They don't think about the people like us who've gone through the system, through the hard knocks, school of hard knocks, until we are in the front lines to ensure that we improve our community. That is what we must do, and present the alternatives to the people until we liberate our country.
Okay, thank you very much. And this is just to get your take. We are winding up with that.
Yeah.
For me, I don't know you. As a community, I ask you this one early, and we've been losing our heroes. Let's say you mentioned about Tom Mboya, and if you look at the vision and how Tom Mboya leadership was, even up to today, I still feel within me that there's no any leader who can match Tom Mboya in the Onagi nation, based on how his thought were. Come again to Ledet Robert Ouko, same place. Come again to Crispin Mbai, the brain behind the devolution. That's, you find that we are losing our heroes, our best of best, in a very mysterious circumstances. And I don't want to mention about Ogola because we are still waiting for maybe the report that will come from the government. And even for Ogola, kind of shook the Onagi nation. How could it happen? And you find that at the moment when they happen, the communities are broken. What should the community do?
Not to give up. Not to give up. I mean, the struggle for liberation is a continuous process, and everybody plays their role. Like Raila, he's played his role, Ouko, Mbai, each of them have played their role in the liberation struggle. We must never give up. We must continue to fight. We must move on in the front lines without fear, without being intimidated. For as long as we keep our eyes on the end goal and know that what we want is Kenya, that we stand with Kenya, then we should not fear. And we know those are not the last.
Yeah.
Some of us will still be killed. I mean, even when I was abducted, I was thinking like, so I'm also going to add to that statistic again. And we know more are still going to be killed. Well, we wholesomely look at all this as it's not even unique to Kenya. Assassinations, political assassinations is a common tactic, especially by dictators and imperialist nations who want to hold on to power. So we must make sure that we don't give up, we continue fighting, we play our role. Because when you fear death, you become ineffective. And when you become ineffective, you can't do anything. So we go on without fear, without intimidation, knowing that by the time they do away with any of us, by the time they will have killed me, or trust me, I'll have played my role to the best that I will have. They will eventually kill me, because if they don't, I don't think Kenya will be the same again. The next liberation of Africa will not be led by the common politicians we always look up to, the popular names that we always look up to, the big and famous people. No. The next liberation of this continent will be led by common people like you and me. Those who will offer themselves to stand in the front lines without fear and offer themselves for the betterment of this country. Those are the people who will make Africa thrive by offering the very best that they have, be it technical support, be it resource-wise, be it just offering your hands to labor. But that is what will liberate our continent.
Mr. Boni, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to have a conversation with you about the justices around our country and around our community. And this is a conversation that is not going to end here. It will continue, and it will continue and continue until we reach at a point whereby we feel we've achieved our goals. Thank you so much, and may God bless you.
Yeah, I really appreciate. Thank you so much for the good work you do. I see some of your productions online.
Yeah.
They are really educative, and we appreciate.
Thank you so much, and may God bless you, and may God bless the good city of Kisumu.
Thank you so much. Yes. Make sure you follow.